Hey, welcome to the Tales of a Gearhead podcast. This is brought to you by Cornwell Tools. They're the choice of professionals since 1919. Yeah, 1919. A little bit of quick math work. That's over 100 years of building top quality tools. I'm your host, Stacey David. All right, let's turn the key and get rolling. All right, well, I got some special guests here today from Cornwell Tools. Got Don Russell, and I've got Blake Horner. Don is the tool guy at Cornwell. You've probably seen Don on the show several times as we talk about Cornwell Tools and some of the things that are going on. Some of the things that we're going to talk about are tools and music. Both of these guys are musicians as well. And we're going to talk cars too, because Blake, you're a car guy.
I am.
What kind of cars do you have?
I have a 1978 Pontiac Phoenix and a 1994 Mustang GT.
Pontiac Phoenix.
Related to the Chevy Nova of the time.
Yes. Okay, so does it have like crazy graphics on it, a big spider on the hood like the Monzas did, or just what?
Clean blue paint job.
Really?
And a 402 Chevy Big Block.
Oh, okay, so that's not factory.
No.
You put that in there?
Yes. Factory was a 3.8 V6.
Yeah. So what made you pick this car?
It kind of just came around to me, actually. So my father owns an auto repair shop.
Yeah.
And when I was about 14 years old, he really wanted to do a project with me just to teach me about every nut and bolt on the car. Got the car, tore it down to the bare subframe. Every single nut and bolt came off of it. We just kept going on it from there.
Yeah.
Since then, I've just continuously improved on it.
Yeah. Now, is it a daily driver?
No.
Okay, so it's just a toy.
Yeah, it's a toy for sure.
Yeah.
And
Now, how old are you, just so people know?
23.
He's 23. So if you guys are wondering why he's picking the 70s and 80s cars, that's the reason. He didn't grow up with 69 Camaros and, that kind of thing. These are the cars that are old cars to him. So we're seeing a big resurgence in those 70s and 80s cars. Don, do you have any memories of those cars?
My very first car, I took over from my mom.
Okay.
So I had a 1977 Ford Mustang II Fastback, canary yellow with a white interior.
Okay, so what kind of music were you listening to on the radio?
I'd already made the transition from 8-track to cassette.
Yes.
The Knack, My Sharona was a big thing coming at that time. Loverboy was making an appearance.
Yeah.
Things like that were just kind of cool. Unlike Blake, I didn't mess with the engine or anything. I just went nuts on the electrical side of the car. I had 26 different horns in the car. Oh, yeah. I had a Cadillac horn, a Volkswagen horn, the original equipment horn. I had a musical horn to play one of 76 different songs. Of that era, horns had a tuning screw on.
Okay, yeah,
So
absolutely.
I tuned them, being a musician, I tuned them to where they were all a quarter pitch off.
Yeah.
So when I hit all the horns at the same time, your teeth hurt.
Oh, gosh, I bet.
It was the most horrid sound you'd heard in your life. Exactly.
Now, you guys are both musicians. Tell me about the connection between cars and music. Because car guys are music people, almost all the way across. So, Blake, what do you play?
I play a 6-string guitar, and I also have a 4-string Fender bass.
So, are you one of those funky bass guys? You do all the slap stuff?
Not necessarily. I'd say more so heavy, fast-paced, more metal-style bass riffs.
So who do you like? What bands do you like?
Well, Metallica has always been one of my biggest influences.
That's a good choice.
And specifically their original bass player, Cliff Burton, was a huge inspiration for me to even pick up a bass. His use of distortion and more lead style playing was really unlike what a lot of people were doing back then.
What do you play, Don?
I'm a low brass player. I baritone and also tuba. I'm not amplified.
And how interesting that it's a horn.
Yeah.
And his cars was
They're
horns.
full of horns. I know. But actually, you mentioned something to me a long time ago that I've tested.
Yeah.
And you said that no matter who you walk into or who you meet, you can always talk about music or cars. And I've tested that because in my job, I meet lots of different people, lots of different personalities all over the world. And that has never failed me. Whenever it's like, what do I talk to this guy about? It's like, or per lady or whatever. It's like, what music do you listen to? And there's always something you can grab onto, or did you know, or I wasn't aware, or things like that. And the same with the car. Like, what was your favorite car? Everybody has a favorite car, whether it's the color.
Or one they love to hate.
Oh, that's another. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We'll get to that here in a minute. Okay, so, Don, if you could have any car, price is not an object, what would it be?
1963 split window Corvette, black exterior, red leather interior.
Wow, you put some thought into this.
Yes.
327?
Those cars are rare enough. If you got just what I asked for, I really wouldn't be picky on the engine, but bigger's better. That's the unicorn for me.
Neil Peart's is coming up for sale. His 63 split window.
No problem.
Chump change,
Yeah. We're selling the house and I'm going to drive the vet. Yeah, that'll work.
Blake, how about you?
1972 Super Duty Trans Am with a 455 and a 4-speed.
Okay, what color?
Green.
Brewster Green!
Yes, with the chicken on the hood.
I love that car. Have you ever seen the John Wayne movie, McHugh?
No.
You have got to rent it tonight. You have to watch it tonight.
I will.
That's the car he drives.
No kidding.
And there's actually a pretty good chase scene of that car in there.
Yeah.
Of course, in typical 70s car movies, it gets destroyed. Okay, let's go to the other side. Cars that you hate. The cars that you would never have.
Any crossover SUV does not do it for me.
Yeah.
I feel like they compensate everything and don't exactly do anything very well.
How about you, Don?
I got a personal connection with a car that I hate.
Yeah.
Because it was one that my parents owned.
It's a 77 Mustang.
1977 Ford Thunderbird 464 barrel. 26-gallon gas tank. This thing would go 200 miles.
Wow.
City or highway didn't make a difference. And the reason I hated it is that era Ford Thunderbird seemed to have some really weird electrical gremlins. You could have the cruise control on, flying down the highway, everything's fine, and all of a sudden, all the lights go out. And no particular reason why. To get the car started, because it had the interlock in the seats, you had to have a button in the seat, right? And we literally would be jumping up and down on the seat to get the car to start. Gas was getting close to 70 cents a gallon.
Oh, that was high.
I didn't know how I was going to make it from week to week, being a high schooler with a part-time job and filling up that 26-gallon gas tank. And I couldn't make it a week. I hated that car.
What is your favorite song to drive to? When you want to just cruise, and just enjoy it, what is that song? And then when you want to drive, what is that song?
Where I go is there's a Harley Davidson set called Road Songs.
So there's not that one song.
No, it's really out of that group. And then if I really want to go someplace, it's some sort of AC/DC. It's Back in Black, it's Thunderstruck, it's something like that. If you're going from point A to point B and, damn the torpedoes and full speed ahead, I got to have some AC/DC cranking out of the stereo.
Yeah. How about you, Blake?
So for me, it depends on which car I'm in. If I'm in the 70s Pontiac, say that my favorite song to drive to would have to be Fortunate Son by CCR.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. I really like you now.
Really puts you into the setting. You got your aviators on, windows down, big block blaring out the tailpipes.
That intro to that song.
Oh, it's just classic.
Yeah.
It makes you want to go.
How about the other car?
So my red Mustang, I actually named Rosie from the AC/DC song Whole Lotta Rosie.
Okay.
Because one day I was in it, played that song, and everything just fit too perfectly.
Yeah. CCR is definitely one of my choices. Traveling Band is another one. It's just
fantastic
I get in
song.
that, I put that song on, man, I'm speeding. I cannot slow down.
Oh, yeah.
But I tell you what, Jackson Brown's Running on Empty.
Oh,
is
great
always
song.
A real
Yes.
good song. That's that cruising song for me.
Yeah.
I don't hardly, turn away from anything that's like a Southern rock thing on that kind of deal. What I don't want is Freebird.
Another classic driving song, Highway Star by Deep Purple.
Oh, Deep Purple was another great one.
I've got a playlist that I call Moving and Flirting with Disaster.
Oh, gosh.
Molly Hatchet. It's got to have a beat, it's got to have some drive to it.
Don, how long have you been at Cornwell?
I've been at Cornwell now 12 years.
What brought you to a tool company? You have a tool background? Were you...
Yeah, I was born and raised in this industry, and I actually supplied product to Cornwell for over 20 years. Long story short, I saw how they treated their employees and how they treated their vendors, and they're just good people, good businessmen, and fun to do business with. They made an offer to me to come on board, and took me all of 15 seconds to say yes.
Have you had any problems like during the pandemic and stuff? How have you guys handled that?
Had any problems?
Yeah, any problems, yes. Let me take this mask off my face.
Did you have to write that question down to think about it? My line is that when the pandemic hit, the worldwide supply chain was put into a blender and somebody hit frappe. No end of challenges getting product. It's something new every week, and that's the biggest challenge. And on top of it, in the middle of the pandemic, somebody stepped on the gas in terms of demand. Dealers are buying more from us. They're putting more out on the street, and we had to keep up when the supply chain was trying to close down a little bit. It's amazing how much time we spend on, are we going to get enough to run a promo on something? We have dealers that call us up, why don't you pull the stuff we're not going to get? And it's like, When it went to press, everything, we had double confirmations that we're going to get it. And in the 60 days from press to going live, something happens.
How is Cornwell looking forward into the oncoming electric car thing?
The majority of our market is outside of the dealership. So when a new car with any sort of system, we're 7 to 10 years before it becomes a real significant portion of our business. We're getting to the point where a lot of the manufacturers are beginning to do electric cars. We're starting to get requests for, insulated pliers, insulated screwdrivers, kind of on the low end of demand.
Yeah. A lot of extension cords and that kind of thing.
Yeah, really. Diesel engine to recharge.
Yeah, that's a whole nother question.
It is. But when you look at the electric car, if you remove the engine from it, there's still a lot of things on the car, suspension and steering and brake work and stuff like that it doesn't go away. Our tools may shift a bit to where we focus more and more on the stuff that's unique for electrical cars. Regardless of what you work on, you need a toolbox to store your stuff in.
Absolutely. Need a toolbox whether you work on anything.
It's a small portion of our line that'll be impacted by the electric cars. Engines in the last 15 years have gotten better. The reliability has gone up, the durability has gone up. So we have seen a natural decline in what I would call engine tools. Valve stuff and top end of the engine has been in a gentle decline for the last 10 years just because the engines are better.
No, in the hot rod world, exactly what you're saying has happened. When I was growing up, you built your own engine and you spent all this time, you went down to super shops or whatever, you got stuff from Speedway and you got your pistons, you got your cam, you got all your parts. You built your engine or you did it with the local machine shop. You assembled it, you put it together. There were no crate engines. Why would I build my own engine anymore when I can go either buy a crate engine or I can go to a builder like a John Cossey or a Keith Dorton or somebody like that and have them build one. Comes with a warranty. I put it in, so yeah, guys don't talk cams and lifters, and even that whole market has changed. Yeah. So yeah, I see that definitely. Just in the last few years, you have these guys that are putting out these complete chassis. Okay. Where we used to go in and you would do a front suspension on a vehicle and then you do the rear suspension. There's a very labor intensive. Well, now you can go to numerous companies and just buy a complete chassis and roll it into your car. And that's becoming the way guys are building cars. It's good and it's bad in some ways because you build a car a little quicker, but they all look the same because they all kind of have the same stance. So when you go into a show and you see a line of 69 Camaros and they all kind of have the same stance and look, that's why. And so still, if you want something to stand out, you have to go outside the easy part and go, I want my stance different, I want my wheel and tire combination different, I'm going to use different kind of paints, and it takes time and tools.
Yes, it does. Yes, certainly.
When the subject of tools comes up in the shop, people will all talk about their sockets and their wrenches, but then we start to get into the subject of exotic tools. These are your body working tools, and these are your flangers and all these special tools. And people are like, where do you get those? Because you're not going to find those at Home Depot, and you're not going to find them at the local hardware store. And that is where Cornwell comes in. They have a catalog that's like the old phone books. You remember the phone books? Well, that's a Cornwell catalog. And these guys will bring the tools right to you. Once you start to get into that world, and once you start to see what's out there, you'll be like, what have I been doing messing around with the stuff that I find locally? One of the cool things about a company like Cornwell is that they do have warranties, and they have guys right on the trucks that can really talk to you about the tools and steer you in the right direction. So if you're really into your projects and you're into doing things right with good tools, check out Cornwell. Got a question here from Stan. Stan is building himself a hot rod. Said he's going to put an I Did It tilt steering column in, and he wants to know how to do this. Great question. There's a lot that goes into this. It's not just a matter of sticking a tape measure up there like a lot of people seem to think. You need to figure out what your seats are going to be. And if you don't actually have the seats, say they haven't come in yet, you need to position yourself at the height that the seat is going to be. For example, if you're going to use an aftermarket seat and they're not in yet, get a measurement of how high the seat is, and this will plant your fanny at the right height looking through the windshield. Now, if you haven't decided this yet, then you need to plant some books 2x4s are something on the floor, and build yourself up to where you are looking through the center of the windshield. You've probably seen me talk about that a lot on the show. You don't want your eyes to be at the top of the windshield. That's going to put your head too high. And you don't want to be down, looking through the base of the windshield. That's going to have you looking through the steering wheel. Ideally, you want your line of sight to be somewhere in the center of the windshield glass. And as you can see, that changes. If you chop the top, that center of glass changes. That's why all of these things change depending on what you're going to do with your project. Now, once you've decided where your line of sight is through the windshield, now you're ready to start deciding how your steering column is going to fit. Now, what you'll want to do, one of the easiest ways to do it is just get a broom handle. I prefer to use like 2-inch PVC pipe. And the reason I use 2 inches, that's roughly the diameter of most of these aftermarket steering columns. That'll give you an idea kind of the size of what that thing is going to be around your knees and stuff. And then you'll just kind of want to lay it in there and angle it back and measure where you want that steering column to sit. Now, the things you're looking for, first of all, keep in mind that almost every aftermarket steering wheel has some sort of a 3 to 4 inch adapter that goes off the steering column, depending on the steering wheel you're going to use. So that's something that you need to factor in into the length of the column that you're looking at. Okay, so you'll get the steering column kind of set out at the angle you want it to be. What you're doing also is measuring how far of a drop. You have to have 2 ways to attach that steering column. One is down through the toe board or the base of the firewall, and then there'll be a column drop that'll have to bolt to the base of the dash. You got to have both of these or that steering column is going to flop all over on you. And how much you angle that column and how much it's dropped is going to depend on where your seat is and how close you are and how much room you've got, all the things we've talked about before. So there's a little bit of time here involved. But you can kind of wing this. If you can hold something up there, worst case scenario, you take a broom handle and you hold it in place with your toe and you kind of drop it and measure how much a drop you're going to have off of the dash. That will give you a basis for your steering column drop. Then you measure the length of that column from where that adapter is going to be for your steering wheel and then down through the toe board. And you keep in mind you want to go roughly 2 inches beyond your toe board. Now I say roughly because that also depends on how your steering shaft is going to go down and connect either to your rack and pinion or your steering box or whatever you're using. Most people use rack and pinion, so you can work around headers and things like that. But where your headers are, all of these things will affect where you position that column. If you go left and right a little bit, if you go up and down, all of these things. So there's a lot of factors that you have to already have planned before you start deciding where that steering column is going to go. And then once you measure it out, make sure, say if you're going to go to I Did It, say it's 33 to 34 inches, which is usually what most aftermarket pickups or hot rod pickups or street rods, it's somewhere in the 30 to the 34 inch long column is generally where you're after. Once you have that decided, then you can go to somebody like I Did It and go, okay, how much extra, well, if I order a 34 inch length on this column, where does that end? So that way you can do a little bit of math and make sure you get your steering wheel so the length is how you want it. That way you don't have a steering wheel that's hitting you in the chest because you got a column that's too long. And then if you shove the column down, then of course it's sticking through the firewall 6 inches. So as you can see, you need to have a lot of factors. You need to have your seat decided. You need to have your steering wheel decided. You need to have your lower steering decided. And it'd be a good idea to know where your headers and where the motor is going to be positioned to run your steering shaft. If you do all of this, you'll be able to lay that column in right on the money. And that's one thing that you notice, cars that are really well built, really well engineered, that steering column will be right where it should be. Now, ideally, when you're driving a car, and if it's a tilt column, you want it to be in its neutral position when you're driving. That way, it'll tilt down for shorter people, and it will tilt up for taller people. You don't want to have to get into a car and run it at full tilt just to be in a normal position. That's a column that usually hasn't been engineered to fit right. Now, the exceptions to that are really tight cars, like chopped 32 sedans and, T-buckets and things like that. There's no room for a column, so you kind of have to do what you have to do. But ideally, you want that column, to sit right at neutral. That way it'll tilt up, tilt down. You got all the movements. You've got everything that you would have in a factory car. Stan, I hope this helps. Good luck to you, man. All right, this question comes from Jan. Jan wants to know what kind of throttle system that she should use on her project. First of all, Jan, it's awesome to have a girl writing in. Second of all, there's a couple different throttle things that you have to decide. Are you going to use mechanical throttle linkage, or are you going to do drive-by-wire? There's kits out there for both of them. Actually, Locar's got both of those. If you're going to use a drive-by-wire, if you're using a late model crate engine that does drive-by-wire, you have to use their throttle assembly. Like I said, Locar's got an aftermarket system that will be compatible with those crate engines, and even with an engine that you pulled out of a junkyard. In the early days of the junkyard drive-by-wires, you had to pull all of that pedal out, and it was a mess. So several companies have come out with aftermarket drive-by-wire pedal assemblies, which solve that problem. It sounds like, though, you're probably looking at more of your mechanical cable linkage. Once again, Locar's got just about everything that you can imagine, from braided stainless steel to black. And one of the things that I like that they've got is all of the brackets and fittings. So it doesn't matter what engine you're using, really. They've got a bracket for it. That means the kickdowns, for the automatic transmissions, and the linkage for 2.4s on a blower, and all of these crazy throttle linkages, even the universal ones, which I use all the time, because most of my throttle assemblies are really crazy, so I have to come up with my own. And they have great universal kits, great cables for your throttle setups. I definitely would go to Locar. For an example, when I did the throttle assembly on Sergeant Rock, well, I didn't want my throttle assembly to come through the firewall in the standard way, because I had all that great, airbrushing on the firewall, and I didn't want to mess it all up. So I used one of their eliminator pedals, which the whole pivot point is down, goes under the floor, and then comes up the base of the toe board. And so I used that pedal in there and had to make my own assembly, had to do the bracketing and the cabling my own way, which the kit from Locar was perfect for doing that. It took me some time, but it made a real safe throttle assembly. So that's where I would steer you on that. All right, that's it for today. Once again, we're brought to you by Cornwell Tools. Have a great day and get out there and work on something.